It's not bad. Can we have a round of applause for the venue and their staff? They've been just so incredible. They've been so fantastic to work with and so professional. Of course, we had some issues with the Wi-Fi, but that's because there's so many people here and we're having such a great time. And I'm so excited to welcome our next guest here, Nicole Sullivan. Nicole was lucky enough to be part of 3 major evolutions in the web. During the first, she introduced components to CSS and HTML, where she created the first design systems in 2006. And during the second, she was at Meta, probably Facebook, thereby known,
yes.
when the precursor to React, known as XHP, was created in 2009. So many of you probably weren't born then, huh? And the next one is happening as we speak. And so after working as a web developer, Nicole joined Chrome at Google as a PM, where she could solve developers' challenges directly in the browser. She believes, if I may be so bold to read what you sent to me earlier, she believes developers have too many jobs to do, and she wants the browser to help. I love that mentality, so I'm especially delighted and absolutely honored to welcome you, Nicole.
Thank you.
So thanks for
Happy
joining
to be
me.
here.
And I wanted to start with the heart of the current thing, the current theme, which is on the tip of all of our tongues, which is React Server Components. And React Server Components is, in my view, a subset, at least in part, of performance, right? The goal here, one of the main goals, is to ship less JavaScript to the browser, to the client. And so, as someone who's been working with CSS for so long, and is up to date on its latest and greatest features, what steps can we, as JavaScript developers, who may not be privy to all the latest and greatest tech in CSS, be taking to leverage modern CSS to ship less JavaScript to the client?
I think that's a really good question. I think we have these traditional lines drawn between what is the job of HTML, what is the job of CSS, and what is the job of JavaScript. And if you break it down, you can also say what is the job of the browser versus a JavaScript framework like React. And I think we've had these sort of rigid lines drawn between these various pieces, and we've said, no, that's only done in JavaScript or only done here. And I think it's important that we actually go back and question some of those and say, were the lines drawn in the right places? Are there pieces that maybe have been traditionally done in React that are stable enough that we should think about what would it look like to have part of that done in the browser instead? So when I joined Chrome, one of the first things I worked on was getting the Chrome team to be closer to JavaScript frameworks and to work much more closely with the core maintainers. So we had Sebastian and Dan and Brian and Andrew and other folks come and tell us what they needed out of the browser. And I think that made a pretty big difference to the perspective of folks working on Chrome in terms of thinking of frameworks as a partnership. And once you start doing that, you can ask yourself questions about, what should be done on each side of the line. And so, traditionally we've thought of JavaScript as being responsible for all of interactivity. I have kind of a spicy take that I'm not sure it should be. Like, JavaScript should absolutely be responsible for all the things that frameworks are amazing at doing. But I'm not sure little random UI widget interactions, like accordions opening and closing, should depend on a bunch of JavaScript having shipped over the wire, and that it should wait for hydration to be functional. So the more that I can build an accordion or tabs or carousel or nav or tree view into the browser, then you can let JavaScript do what JavaScript is great at, which is very unique interactions, things that are specific to your application or the problems that you're trying to solve, rather than having hey, you want interaction, you need JavaScript every single time.
So what are these latest APIs that we should be paying attention to?
It's funny.
Not to put you on the spot.
Well, I'm talking about one that everybody disagrees about. So I really love it, but not everybody loves it. So it may not turn out to be a thing at all, but it's a toggle API. And it's the basis of a little mini state machine that would live in CSS and HTML. And the idea is that you could have some sort of user interaction on a trigger, and it could cause a state change on a target. And a surprising amount of the interactions on the web, menu opening and closing, pop-up popping up and then going away, they're actually just, they come down to that very simple principle. And so it may not ship at all because it's super disagreed about, to be honest. But I think it presses the right boundaries in terms of what can be done. So if you all want to try that API and tell me what you think, what you hate, what works and doesn't work, the idea of it would really be, if we can do things like baking accessibility into the browser, then maybe a developer doesn't have to think about their tap targets, doesn't have to think about their keyboard shortcuts for whatever ARIA role that they're using, doesn't have to think about the myriad problems that users have. Because you may have a user that maybe they want dark mode, maybe they're on a mobile phone, maybe they're on a tablet, maybe they use tap, maybe they have a braille reader, maybe they use a screen reader. I'm sure you feel this pressure where you have all these users and somehow you're supposed to meet all of their needs, and it can honestly feel like failing again and again. And so part of what I want to do is be like, hey, y'all, you have all these jobs and it's actually impossible for you to do them all well. So what if the browser could, for example, you use that API that changes state, what if we could update the accessibility tree ourselves? And in that way, you don't have to do it unless you're doing something funky or different than, it's just tabs or accordion. We all know how that's supposed to work. And I hear from folks who use assistive tech things like, people are doing a pretty good job of putting ARIA roles on things, but they never actually set up the keyboard shortcuts they're supposed to. So if you put ARIA for something being tabs or whatever, you're also supposed to implement what the arrow keys do and the enter key does and what the tab keys do. And I think that that's not reasonable for most developers. Like, even if we care a lot, and I think some care, some actually. I'm gonna be honest, when I do developer interviews a lot,
some care more about the developer experience than the customer experience.
Yeah, exactly. But I think even for those who care, they think they're not necessarily getting it right.
Right.
They'll be like, well, I tried for accessibility, but they don't.
So how do we get them to care more?
I don't want to. I want to say,
Okay.
you should not, well, I might not say that spicy. I take it down one notch of spicy.
Sure.
I honestly think that it's too many things, because you also have the combination. You could have someone who's on a mobile phone in dark mode who uses a screen reader, and you're supposed to do all the combinations of those possibilities and figure them out. To me, it's not actually doable. And that's why I'd like for the browser to ship APIs that have accessibility baked in. Because if it does, then an average developer makes a button and it just works.
Interesting. So where are we in the state of the art of that?
Well, like I said, we have the toggle, extremely disputed toggle API.
Sure.
And then we also are working on what it would look like to take summary details and turn it into an accordion. We're looking at adding a select menu, which can be stylable and you can have custom content in it. We're looking at other components. Right now we're designing a carousel. Not your big hero carousel thingy, but like a product image carousel.
But in terms of the roadmap, how far along are they? When can we expect them? Or are these still up for debate?
It's standards. Everything is up for debate forever, if we're being honest. Some of the APIs are available now. What we started with in terms of our roadmap was, hey, there's just missing stuff from CSS. We see people doing things like using CSS and JS, where all their CSS is parsed once as JavaScript, parsed again as CSS, and only then can be rendered to the browser. We're like, okay, there's clearly missing pieces here around scope and nesting and other stuff that architecturally CSS just needed so that everything isn't in the global scope. So we had a sort of list of 7 or so APIs that were in our top set of developer requests for architecture. By the end of the year, we should have shipped 6.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so that's good.
All right, let's all hold it to that, okay?
Do hold me to it.
At
sure.
Stubbornella on Twitter.
And then for the components,
Yep.
select menu, we have a target by end of year. It's looking good. The things it relies on, which are anchor positioning and popover, are coming along really well. Popover is being able to put something in the browser's front layer. So instead of having to use Z-index or whatever, you can actually pop something into the front layer that the browser itself would use. And anchor positioning means that without any JavaScript, just CSS, you can anchor something around another element. And you can say, hey, if there's enough room, it should be top right. But if there isn't, then pop it down here and give your sort of stack of preferences about where something anchors. Which you think that's not that much JavaScript, but most teams that I talk to are like, yeah, but it's really painful to maintain that JavaScript. So that, our goal is to ship select menu, but we also ship all the low-level APIs you need to make select menu that then can be used for hints and tooltips and other things.
Now, fast forward to the point where all of these APIs that you just mentioned are live. They all live in the browser. You can access them today across all.
All browsers?
All browsers, like,
Okay.
The asterisk, of course.
I like this
with
future.
all the others. This is a great future to think about. Make the case for someone who is hesitant to spend the time to refactor, to integrate these. What performance gains? I mean, this is obviously going to vary wildly across the many different applications that are out there. But just make the case for them. If you're speaking to someone who's got, let's say, we're at a React conference, who's got an Next.js app, who's maybe it's a B2B app or maybe it's a B2C app, whatever it is. But make the case for why they should care about these, at least look into them, if not actually adopt them. Or more urgent if you feel.
Ooh, which reasons do I want to pick? I think I'm going to talk about two different things.
Sure.
The first one is developer productivity, and then we'll see if I have time to get to the next one.
Yeah.
So when I started this effort, I went and I tried out 50 or so different commerce sites because I thought this is a great way to sort of see like the standard shopping flows. How are we doing on the web? And so I went through shopping, product details, product list, product search results, and then checkout flow, including the cart. And I did this for 50 sites. And honestly, I would have kept better data, but I was looking for a good one, and I did not find a good one.
Oh, interesting.
Every single one had bugs. If you swiped the product image carousel too fast, the wrong indicator would be lit. Sometimes the scroll didn't work. It wasn't matching browser physics. So you're swiping the carousel and it's jagging its way along, or it's way too fast. So there were also, and oh my God.
The scroll hijacking is my pet. I hate it.
Yeah.
I will close your site in half a millisecond if you're hijacking the
I have one that's
scroll.
worse though.
Yeah, what's that?
Product image zoom, where half the time you zoom in on the product image and it's actually smaller than it was before.
Oh my God.
Or it
What?
opens bigger and
I think I've seen that.
The X is actually covered, so you can't figure out how to close the
Yep.
opened product image zoom.
Or escape doesn't work.
So I found one site that did well, and I didn't find
Out
a
of 50.
single bug, and it is a React app. Yes, out of 50. And they were 50 chosen randomly and not necessarily representative.
Yeah.
This site, it's called babylist.com, and it...
That's the good one?
Yes.
I'm actually using that.
At least it was a couple years ago.
I
Yes.
like that site.
It's
I'm
a good-
using it right now.
Yeah,
shout
it's
out,
a
shout
really
out to
good
Babylist.
site.
Yeah.
Shout out to Babylist. Anyway, I asked their CEO, how did you achieve this? Because that's pretty incredible. And she said it took 6 to 8 developer weeks for their product image zoom and their carousel. And she said, and they have ongoing maintenance when there are bugs or browser updates and that sort of thing. And so I thought, well, okay, could we set a goal that a developer wanting to ship a product image carousel only needed 1 week or less? And so that's our goal.
So you reached out to them.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're gonna help you
I'm
make
like,
this
how
even
did
better.
you do this?
Yeah.
Because you're the only ones. And I looked at big retailers. I wasn't, I was looking at
Sure.
sites where you'd think they would get it
so,
right.
So they have the resources to engage you, to connect, and to implement these. So back to the original question, what's the case you make? Were you making the case to them? So that's where you're going.
Well, I'm making the case to y'all because we're in a
Yeah.
future, right? Your question was we're
The
in
hypothetical
the
future,
hypothetical future where all of
which
this
is
is available.
absolutely going to happen.
You spend a lot of developer time, I'd imagine, on things that are not the most fun and are sort of repetitive. How many folks here have built a tab set? Okay, almost everybody. How many people have built it more than once? Yeah, okay, so that's what I want to solve. Because the other thing is I talked to another, this time a big retailer, and they had 7 different tab sets. in their like design system. And I will say there are a shocking number of design systems at companies as well. So, you know, one company may start with a single design system and then it sprouts other design systems. And so if you can take the effort out of making the base components like tabs or accordion or carousel, then the work to do to like brand those is a lot smaller.
Very nice.
I hope so.
So no percentage performance improvements, et cetera. Like, is that too difficult to like fathom or postulate, or?
There is, I think there could be performance improvements.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure ahead of time until we have working code, but where I'm focused is on INP, interaction to next paint, which is the user does something and clicks or something like that, and we count the time until the browser can paint the next frame. I'm particularly excited about this because a lot of the early Core Web Vitals, they focused a lot on the multi-page app experience, which is important to a single-page app too, because that's your user's first impression, but they didn't necessarily capture those subsequent user interactions. And so I really like INP for the way that it, you know, a user could be several views deep in a single-page app built with React, and they'll have that, you know, those measurements taken as well.
Yeah, and I want to get your unfiltered opinion on React. I mean, because it's an interesting case study because you founded what then became Project Aurora. So for those who aren't aware, Project Aurora is a small team at Google, and Google Chrome more specifically, that works directly with libraries and frameworks such as Next.js and the React team, and I believe also the Vue team.
Nuxt and Gatsby. And they contribute, anytime they can contribute to a lower level, they will. So, you know, if they can contribute it to like an infra tool, and that will get out to all the frameworks, they do that. Yeah.
And when I was talking with Hussein Jurde from the Chrome team about this, he said
great.
that the goal of the Aurora team is to make the web better, and this is why they're working together. So what inspired this work, and how has it been? I know you're not currently with the Aurora team, but how has it been working directly with those teams, and what has transpired from that? And what can you tell the audience here, both in person and live, about what has been accomplished from that relationship?
I don't think it's hard to even put into words how much it changed things. When I joined Chrome, there was sort of a sense of an adversarial relationship with frameworks. I don't know if folks remember that, but there was just this, I just didn't understand why. It seemed really silly to me, like we should be on the same team. Clearly we have the same goals.
It's on the web, yeah.
But it was this adversarial relationship, and I think now a huge part of our strategy as an entire organization is that we're focused on how do we meet the needs of abstractions and tools, and frameworks fall into that bucket. We did a little study where we looked at like who were the developers that were using vanilla JavaScript, and what we found is they were most likely to work on their own, just themselves or maybe one other person. They were most likely to not use any other tools, to not use NPM, to not use like the standard set of tools we've all gotten used to. And so the conclusion I drew from that was these are hobbyists, or maybe students, but probably hobbyists. And so that allowed us to switch things around and say, no, the bulk of the web uses frameworks, cares about frameworks, want their frameworks to be good and fast and everything else. So that really switched us to thinking about how do we make framework authors happy and framework developers have great outcomes.
Wonderful.
And then the React team, I should just say, was amazing. Like, they worked with us when we still had no idea what we were doing. They spent a ton of time with us being like, nope, that's not how hydration works.
Yeah.
So that we could learn and start to, you know, both put stuff in the browser that was useful, but also contribute performance-wise to these
Absolutely.
tools.
I won't linger on this because you're not doing this presently. And if you're curious about that, I did interview Hussein Jurde, so that is on the Real World React YouTube channel. So presently,
Yes.
what are you doing day to day at Chrome?
Yeah, I'm the product manager for Web UI. And so that includes everything from like style and CSS, layout, to some degree paint. It's DOM and HTML. It's UI dev tools, so everything that's in the HTML and CSS panes and dev tools. as well as like animations and some other ones. And then it's also our interactions team, so they focus on scrolling, interactions, taps and touches, and on animations. Although some of that last bit, I found a new PM who's going to take some of it on, which I'm really excited about.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And so basically, I look at what are the problems you all are trying to solve, like interactivity, dark mode, accessibility, what features are you trying to ship, and I figure out what are the missing pieces in the browser that could make your life easier. So, someone asked recently for, could there be a declarative date time sort of element thing? So my job is, right? Yeah. Yes, and arrange for dates, and people, I mean, these are just requests. I don't know if we can do them, right? We got asked for them last week. So, but yeah, we get asked for these things. And then similarly, like formatting numbers, like should you use decimal points or commas? It depends on where you are in the world. Like, so could the browser solve some of that? And so those are the sorts of problems where my job is to go and talk to you all and hear what's broken, what isn't working, or even just like what problem are you done solving and want someone else to solve for you? And then I go and figure out in the browser teams, like, does this make sense? Has anyone tried to do it? How hard would it be to standardize it? And put a proposal together, and then we work it through the standards process. And I would say a lot more ideas go in at each stage. It drops off, but it's great to have that sort of flow through of ideas from the developer community to the.
And very quickly, for those who are not aware, can you just talk us about the standards process in like 30 seconds or less?
Yes, I can try. Wow. So there are a lot of different working groups. They all have overlaps and differences. So we have the working group for HTML. We have the CSS working group. We have various working groups that help out with accessibility-related questions. There's a whole process, and there are articles, I think, on web.dev you can look at if you'd like to understand it better. But essentially a process of going from an idea through to something that can actually ship in multiple browsers. And we have like intent to prototypes and intent to ships, which are essentially like us sending up a signal and being like, please give us feedback. We made something up. Does this make sense? Yeah. So.
Got it. Thank you.
Was that 30 seconds?
I don't know.
Okay.
And sorry for making it. I just didn't want to go on a tangent on
Yeah.
that specific topic. But where is this in the standard cycle? Chrome shipping React in the browser.
That's like the third time I've gotten asked that at this conference. Yeah, a lot of people want to know, like, why not just ship React in the browser? Yep. I asked that question of my engineers also, just to see what they would say. My take on it now is this. Each layer of the web platform operates at different timescales and can make different kinds of changes without breaking the whole web. So we think of React, right, as having to be like incredibly stable and not break all of your sites. But if we look at the layer lower than that of Chrome and the browser, we have to be even more stable. And y'all do really weird stuff sometimes. So we have to make sure, like, sorry. People will add a property in CSS that doesn't do anything now, right? But then if we want to add that property later, we have to look how many people did that when it was a nothing, when nothing happened as a result of it, so we don't break all of those sites when we do. But the point I'm getting at is the web platform can't move very fast, both because of standards, but also because we just can't be breaking you. And so I think that there's stuff that React does that makes sense to move into the browser wherever it makes sense to framework authors, where they need something from us. But we have to be really thoughtful about what's stable enough to migrate over the line. Because once it's in the browser, it's incredibly hard to change. So I think there's like innovation at every stage. You innovate in your own app. It's on a meta framework and framework like Next and React that innovates or Remix. And then you have some amount of innovation at the browser level, but it's slower. Yeah.
Okay, so if you had to guess at a timeline of when React would be in the browser.
Tomorrow.
Didn't
we tell you that's in our release?
A big announcement coming from the Chrome team. You heard it here first.
I think that parts of it already are. Like, the reality is, like, we got feedback that changed the course of our roadmap from the React team starting I don't know, that was around when I started at Chrome. So I'm going to say that was like 2019 we started working with them, and honestly meeting with them every single week to figure out what the direction of the browser should be and how we could help with the framework as well. And so stuff from that has already shipped in Chrome.
Got it. Interesting. Let's switch gears a little bit. We got a few minutes left. Utility classes. They've always been a thing. But there's a current level of excitement and also debate, particularly with Tailwind. So what do you make of this new resurgence and this excitement, particularly in Tailwind?
I kind of came up with utility classes, so I think they're great. But, welcome.
I should have known that.
Well, yeah, most people don't. I can show the GitHub receipts.
Put it on the LinkedIn.
Yeah. Put it on LinkedIn, yeah. So it looked like, spacing classes that could give small, medium, and large spacing. It looked like stuff that did, topography and colors and all the stuff that changes from view to view, and so it's very hard to say exactly what it should be. I will say I think Tailwind has taken it too far, in that I think that I don't know. That's basically me saying I think I'm right, so bear with me. But the way that I thought of it was this: every component should have its default behavior, its default spacing, its default colors, which all work, because a whole lot of people are going to use your components who have no idea what color anything should be or how much space should be between anything, and given any rope, they will make mistakes. And so not having those sort of opinionated components feels like a missing piece to me. I saw the utility classes as modifiers for that. So you have your base component. Now you need it to have more spacing because it's a marketing page. Great, add a utility class for more spacing. But I think a lot of stuff lives, a lot of meaning lives at the component level, and I don't want to lose that, basically. Okay. So I think both sides are right, and if they stop fighting, it actually works really nicely together.
Interesting. Let's end on a light note. Why are there so many ways to define colors? What can you tell me about this new OKLCH thing?
That's so funny because I said the same thing to the folks that were designing the new colors. I was like, did you really need that many of them? What's going on? And then they showed me some of the stuff that you could do with them that you couldn't do before. And the old colors, really, they all went through these murky gray, brown colors in the middle if you did gradients. So you'd start at one color and end at another, but somehow it would go through a murky, gross color in the middle. And the new color spaces are beautiful, right? So they might go through a bright, beautiful color in the center that's actually creates a gradient that feels nice. I think similarly, some of the color spaces add a vibrancy. When I first look at some of the images that were done in the new color spaces, it actually hurt my eyes. They were so bright.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, there's something to this. So yeah, it's a lot of color spaces. I still agree with that, but I think that they provide different things. And my hope is that they allow us to do things like create whole color systems where you're not having to individually pick a whole pile of colors. Instead, you pick one or two, and you're able to set up a system where those colors filter out into your whole application and include things like appropriate color contrast and that kind of thing.
All right, Nicole, I really appreciate you joining us. It's been such a lovely
having me.
conversation. Great to meet you. Can we give it up for Nicole, everyone?
Thank you.